This week, we will be adding on what we've studied last week, box and whisker plot. The concept that we want to focus on is the outliers. Sometimes when you collect data, you will find some extremely large or small data compared to the rest. Researchers sometimes eliminate those data that do not fit with the rest because it will skew the real picture of what's happening. So our job today is to learn how to identify outliers. I want you to pay attention to these 12 numbers. Would you consider this 10 as an outlier? Or how about this 22? In order to identify outliers, we have to find a way to draw lines for upper and lower boundary. Then you can say if the data is greater than this upper boundary, then it is an outlier. Or if the number is less than this lower boundary, then it is an outlier. Let's just jump right into the problem. Okay. In order to find outlier, the first step is no different from creating a box and whisker plot. So first, we will find a 5-point summary. Okay. To find the 5-point summary, let's start with median. Okay. Median is the middle number. Since there are 12 numbers, the middle will be right here. So the median will be what? It's going to be the middle of 12 and 13, so it's 12.5. Next, lower quartile. Lower quartile, you're going to find the median of the first half, which is right here. So lower quartile is 11. Upper quartile is the median of the second half. So it's right here. So it's 14.5. And then minimum is the smallest number. So the minimum is 10, and then maximum is 22. Also, we need to find an interquartile range, which is defined as Q3 minus Q1. So it is, what's Q3? 14.5 minus Q1, 11, which is interquartile range is 3.5. Now we have all the enough of ingredients to find upper boundary to identify outlier. So to find upper boundary, here's the formula. Upper boundary is upper quartile plus 1.5 times interquartile range. Okay, so what is upper quartile? Upper quartile is this number, 14.5 plus, and then 1.5, it's always 1.5 times interquartile range. Interquartile range is this, 3.5. Let's see, 1.5 times 3.5 is 5.25. So it's 14.5 plus 5.25. Which is 19.75. Now, what does that mean? It means that any number right here, any data larger than upper boundary is an outlier. That means if there are any numbers that are bigger than 19.75, that will be an outlier. Now, is there any outlier here? Is there any number that is bigger than 19.75? And there is. There's one number, which is this 22. So this 22 has been identified as outlier. And we're going to do the same thing for lower boundary. The lower boundary is lower quartile, which is lower quartile is 11, minus, this time subtract 1.5 times into quartile range 3.5. So it's going to be 11 minus 5.25. Which is 5.75. So what does that mean? So 5.75 is the lower boundary, and any data smaller than the 5.75 is going to be an outlier. Now let's take a look at it. Is there any number that are smaller than 5.75? 5.75? Yeah. And there isn't. That means there is no outlier on the left side, smaller side. So that happens. And sometimes there are no outliers. Okay. Or sometimes you have one end outlier, or maybe both ends. Okay, but in this case we've identified 22 as an outlier. So now we are ready to construct box and whisker plots. Okay, so box and whisker plots, we're going to use the 5-point summary. Minimum is 10. Let's just, so minimum is 10. There's 10 right here. Lower quartile is 11. Median is 12.5 right here. Upper quartile is 14.5. 14.5. Now, maximum right here used to be 22, but since we've identified 22 as outliers, we will put asterisk sign. Then we're going to take next the biggest number data, which is 17. So we will assign 17 as maximum number. Okay. And then we will create box and whisker plot by identifying outlier with asterisk. And that's it. So this concludes this video, this week's video instruction. I want to give you an announcement. Next week, May 18 to 22, we will be having a catch-up week. There are a number of you that are getting a little behind, and I wanted to give some time to get back on track. I also want to thank each one of you for doing your best to stay with the classes. This is not an ideal setting for learning math or anything, as a matter of fact. I know that some of you are all by yourself as your parents are working. I know some of you are taking care of your little brothers and sisters and relatives. I really appreciate you guys. So after next week's catch-up week, we have only 2 more lessons to go for my class. So hang in there. Don't just stay in your room all day. If you're allowed to do some exercise, take a walk by keeping the social distancing, I know you will feel better. With that, have a great week and take care.